Out front with me now, Democratic Congressman Raul Grijalva of Arizona. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
I was looking, of course, on Twitter. At 11:15 this morning, Congressman, I saw you were celebrating on Twitter the fact that the administration had dropped the fight for the citizenship question and was moving on, at least it appeared. That was this morning. What do you say now?
Well, I say that, I thought that the lead counsel for the senior counsel for Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund, Mr. Saenz, said it best. The administration is now doubling down on stupid. And I think the plaintiffs are in a strong position. The fact that, the opinion from the Supreme Court in holding and leaving the question out of citizenship said that the rationale that the administration had seemed contrived. And after Secretary Ross lied to Congress as to the motivation behind it, I think the strength is still there. And the federal judge, this is going to proceed forward. The president has obviously embarrassed by the fact that he couldn't get his way. This is the Supreme Court. And contempt on not following an order has consequences. And the consequences are that to continue to play this, to continue to try to milk as much political capital as he can out of this question is a big mistake. The Supreme Court has held it. Shouldn't appear in there. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. But this whole drama that he's created, this uncertainty he's created, even within his own ranks at the Justice Department, I think is another sad chapter of dysfunctional. One hand doesn't know what's going on, but it's already been clearly decided. I am very confident that this whole exercise by Trump is going to go nowhere.
The president on Monday was asked why it was so important to him to include the citizenship question. I want to remind viewers what he said.
Yeah. I think it's very important to find out if somebody's a citizen as opposed to an illegal.
They're not allowed to ask whether or not somebody's a citizen of the United States. How horrible and ridiculous is that?
Can you imagine you send out a census and you're not allowed to say whether or not a person's an American citizen?
I'm not sure what the president says. I mean, what he was talking about is it's important to find out if someone's a citizen as opposed to illegal. And he talks about Democrats in some of his remarks about this. I'm not sure it makes any different. He's making any different a case than the one that the Supreme Court actually just shot down. But we do know that the president's supporters are in lockstep with him on this. How do you convince them otherwise, Congressman?
That this nation and the census, which is part of the counting of the people of this nation, has been going on. And it's been going on to count every resident in this nation without prejudice and with confidentiality. That's been the story. I think the motivation behind it is pretty simple. It's to isolate groups, to diminish their importance politically and otherwise. And I think the president, this is, to me, has always been a voter suppression issue. It's always been an issue that's xenophobic from the beginning as to who's being targeted. The sense about all residents, and that's the way it should be. My father was a green card holder for much of his life, and he lived in this country and worked. He was counted, and he should be counted. He's a taxpayer. He's helping raise a family in this country, a family of citizens, and a family unit. Why should they be left out, and why should any resident in this country be left out? It's a way the president's trying to intimidate, suppress the count, and in suppressing the count, he also affects political representation in this country.
We're now hearing what at least one Justice Department attorney was saying to the federal judge in this. I mean, saying that the tweet was the first time they had heard about the president's position, and also even acknowledging this attorney says, "I'm doing my absolute best to figure out what is going on." I mean, it really sounds like chaos surrounding, as you point out, one of the most important national surveys taken, and taken only every 10 years. Is there anything Congress can do about this?
Well, the litigation was that point, and Congress has, at least the House reaffirmed through our action that everybody should be counted, and that the citizenship question was going to suppress the count, and it was going to intimidate and try to marginalize people in this country, period. And we've affirmed that.
Do you think just
Mr.
the president
McConnell doesn't want to deal with those questions.
Do you think, Congressman,
yes,
even if the Supreme Court, yes, the highest court in the land, this is now, nobody knows what is going to happen now as this is all just happening today. The fight, though, dragging out this fight it could very well threaten the deadlines that the administration is up against in terms of printing and beginning the count. What could that mean?
Well, I hope that this particular political tantrum fit that the president is having doesn't do what you just asked. Jeopardize a count that is vital to representation. It's vital to resource distribution. It's vital to local communities to be able to know how to plan and how to accommodate the residents that they have. Why deny that to people, and why deny that to our country in and of itself? So this tantrum is jeopardizing a real accurate and necessary count that has historically been essential for the governance of this country.
I also want to ask you about the president's 4th of July event that's planned on the National Mall tomorrow. You're the chair of the committee that has oversight over the country's national parks and the Interior Department. You sent a letter to the Interior Secretary today asking for an accounting, really, of the $2.5 million that we now know is going to be diverted to help pay for the event from the Interior Department. You call it illegal. Why?
Yeah, I really do. I think, you know, the recreation fee that parks ask in charge of visitors is used specifically to support of those parks and those public lands that we visit and that we recreated. And diverting money during the shutdown, painful. But this one, $2.5 million directly out of that fund that all Americans pay to maintain their parks, and to divert that on a use that is not prescribed for that fund for what essentially is a self-grandization event that Trump is having for himself we believe is illegal, and we're asking the Secretary Bernhardt to provide us the details, the cost, the rationale, legal and otherwise, for that transfer, which I believe strongly does not exist. And just to say we're going to do it when there's a law that specifically says these funds must be used in these parks. And the reason for the letter, otherwise, you know, the whole event is some major self-congratulatory event for Trump, more political than patriotic, in the sense that, you know, the VIP seats go to high-end donors for the Republican Party. The event itself is about military power, as opposed to talking about the values and the importance of the 4th of July, our independence, who we are as a nation, a unifying time for our country. That's not happening at this event.
Let us see what the president says in that speech tomorrow night. Congressman, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it.